Ranking Member Biggs for his opening statements. Mr. Biggs, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate this, you holding this hearing today, and appreciate you recognizing me for a few minutes to provide an opening statement. We'll never forget the horror of Uvalde, and those who were victimized will also remain in our hearts and our minds. And as the chair has said, there was a cavalcade of failures on that day. There are many reasons that evil persists and that evil acts. I welcome our two witnesses today. We have Dr. John Lott, Jr., who's an economist, world-recognized expert on guns and crime. He served as the Senior Advisor for Research and Statistics in the Office of Justice Programs and in the Office of Legal Policy in the U.S. Department of Justice, and has held research or teaching positions at various academic institutions, including the University of Chicago, Yale, the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania, Stanford, UCLA, and Rice. And he was the chief economist at the U.S. Sentencing Commission during 1988 to 89. He holds a PhD in economics from UCLA. Nobel laureate Milton Friedman noted John Lott has few equals as a perceptive analyst of controversial public policy issues. He's a prolific author for both academic and popular publications, and has published over 100 articles in peer-reviewed academic journals and written 10 books, including More Guns, Less Crime. His most recent books are Dumbing Down the Courts and How Politics Keep the Smartest Judges Off the Bench. He's been one of the most productive and cited economists in the world. From 1969 to 2000, he ranked 26th worldwide in terms of quality-adjusted total academic journal output and 4th in terms of total research output. Among economics, business, and law professors, his research is currently the 14th most downloaded in the world. I also welcome the Honorable Jack Brewer to be with us today. He is from Fort Worth, Texas, grew up in Grapevine, went on to a successful athletic career both in track and field and in professional football. But beyond that, though, Mr. Brewer is a humanitarian. He's an ordained evangelist who's dedicated his life to initiatives aligning with biblical commandments to serve the fatherless, the poor, the widows, and the captives. That's what his focus is. He will be talking today about the need for families if we're going to stop violence of all kinds, in particular gun violence. To date, his foundation has delivered over $70 million in medical aid, supports over 55 orphan care centers, and helped deliver sports equipment to over 1 million underserved children, and helps bring medical care to over 20,000 women and children around the world. I'm delighted to welcome our two witnesses here today. One other thing that our distinguished chairwoman said today is we have to be honest. But despite the title of the hearing today, there hasn't been an honest engagement in search for bipartisan solutions to gun violence, mostly because there's only one solution for my friends across the aisle, that is to emasculate the Second Amendment and remove guns from legal, lawful, and law-abiding citizens. For proof, just look at the bills they've either introduced or brought through the committee in the 117th Congress. For example, they have pushed legislation to infringe upon the rights of law-abiding Americans, such as federally mandating background checks on all firearm transfers, red flag laws, banning certain semi-automatic firearms, extending background check waiting periods, establishing new federal databases, and establishing a national firearm registry. Those proposals, gun law experts have explained, will do nothing to end gun violence or in the criminal use of firearms. They did this while demonstrating a complete lack of respect for and understanding of the Second Amendment rights of law-abiding Americans. Don't take my word for it. Let their own words speak for themselves. President Biden stated, quote, "A 9mm bullet blows the lung out of the body. So the idea of these high-caliber weapons is there's simply no rational basis for it in terms of self-protection. Hunting. And remember, the Constitution, the Second Amendment, was never absolute." Law enforcement, military, and ballistic experts agree that those claims, are pure nonsense. I'm talking about the Second Amendment rights of law-abiding Americans. One of the representatives on this committee stated, quote, "Spare me the bull about constitutional rights, close quote. And that same representative also questioned whether or not someone with a semi-automatic rifle has ever been stopped by a law-abiding American with a firearm. Specifically stated, I don't think there's a single, and I'm quoting here, I don't think there's a single incident, and maybe there's one, but I've not found one of an assailant using an assault weapon that was stopped by a person with a gun. Literally a month before he made that claim, a woman stopped what law enforcement indicate was likely to be a mass casualty event in West Virginia when she shot a man carrying an AR-15 type rifle with her handgun. There's one example. An example from November 24th, 2022, was that when a 23-year-old woman in a suburb of Chicago, licensed to have a carry conceal permit, shot a man trying to break into her car early in the morning. Just last week, a 56-year-old Chicago man being robbed by 4 suspects on Chicago on the west side turned the tables and shot 3 of the robbers, wounding 2 of them and saving his own life. Democrats aren't interested in searching for the causes of these horrific and tragic acts of violence, which is, as I said, the persistence of evil in the world. And how do we curb that? They're only interested in trampling on the Second Amendment rights of law-abiding Americans. And today we're examining the tragedy in Uvalde. The murderer there was estranged from his father and engaged in numerous heated conflicts and arguments with his mother, who was having trouble raising her son. I bring up the shooter only because the shooter in Uvalde is not unique in having a difficult and troubled home life. Dr. Peter Langman, an expert on the psychology of school shooters and other perpetrators of mass violence, examined 56 school shooters and found that, quote, 82% of the sample either grew up in dysfunctional families or without their parents together for at least a significant part of their lives, close quote. Research from Dr. Brad Wilcox, a professor of sociology at the University of Virginia and senior fellow at the Institute for Family Studies, finds that males growing up in single-mother homes are nearly twice as likely to end up delinquent compared to males who enjoy good relationships with their fathers. This is not to denigrate single-mother homes. Having my own mother grow up in such a home, it is only to talk about the difficulties and the exacerbation of raising a family that goes hand in hand with these difficult situations. How long can we continue to ignore these findings if we're really going to search for bipartisan solutions to put a stop to these tragic, tragic events? My colleagues across the aisle would like to ignore the connection between adolescent males growing up without their fathers and these violent events, and yet studies indicate very clearly there is a significant correlation and probably a causative effect. In fact, during a hearing this Congress in a plea for new gun control laws, our own chairman stated, quote, a recent study in the American Journal of Medicine found that compared to 29 other high-income countries, the gun-related murder rate in the United States is 25 times higher, even when you adjust for population differences. Americans are disproportionately killed by gun violence. One of the critical differences, of course, is that other countries have stronger gun safety laws, close quote. The fact is that this country has numerous gun laws and penalties already in place for those who violate those laws, for those who sell guns, those who distribute guns, those who traffic in guns, and those who use guns illegally for violent purposes. And what the chairman failed to acknowledge is the fact that nearly a quarter of children in the United States live with only one parent. That is also more than any other country on the planet and has a direct correlation to all the violence in our society, including gun violence. It is now time for us to proceed with this hearing. I'm looking forward to the compelling testimony of all those who are here today, but it's also something, if you're going to look at this testimony, it's important to look at root causes for this violence and not focus solely on taking away Second Amendment constitutionally protected rights. With that, Madam Chair, I'll yield back.
Thank you, Chairwoman Jackson-Lee, for convening this hearing, and I thank the witnesses for being here to inform this committee about how the tragedy in Uvalde can help us continue